I'd have these problems that I'd have to discuss, and my husband would be worried that we weren't going to have a date. And so he could hardly listen to my problems because I said I was going to have a date. And then I'd come together with him and he wants to talk about her problems. That's not going to
Not
work.
very romantic.
No, that's not very romantic. But so now it's been another 7 years since we've been ill, and my husband has realized that couples have to talk through logistics. They have to do that before they can have a date.
Yeah.
And so now when I come together with him, he's ready. Like he's ready. He's going to have something to say. Could be about me. I don't know. Like it's going to be and I'm going to listen. Because if I listen, we can have a date.
Welcome back to Psychobabble, where we expose bad therapy and the narratives that contribute to our poor mental health. I'm Hannah Spier. First, please like on your way in, and if you're listening on audio, please leave a review. That will really help me out a lot. But what I'm most happy about is all of your messages and feedback. I really take them very seriously. And one of these topic requests that I've got and resonated with me very deeply is one that we're going to tackle today. And that is how to navigate from one phase of life to the next. And in particular, how to let go of kids when they're growing up. And that question struck a chord with me because, as you know, I'm experiencing this bittersweet shift myself of having a baby constantly on me to being hands-free and more time. And it's difficult. It's difficult. And that makes it extra hard when the time comes to transition. So have these emotional challenges, then we start doubting ourselves and asking very deep questions. So yeah, we're gonna try to answer some of those today. And yeah, at the same time, I see some disturbing societal trends, and one of them is that my contemporaries, they're dressing like virginal teenagers, behaving like them, not really not fulfilling the roles as mothers. And I do think that also, I'm very honored today to be joined by Tammy Peterson, who is well known for her support of her family, but now also how she's embraced the role of matriarch and is really on a mission to help women find their path. So welcome, Tammy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for the invitation. It's very interesting that you have invited me and that you say this is why you're inviting me. So I would say that that's very much in keeping with what I want to do. So I'm glad to be here.
So yes, let's start. This is such a big topic. It's such a difficult question. So let's start. Let's try to do it a bit structured. Let's start with the first transition. With the first. So Jung. I'm in Zurich. We're all fans of Jung here. He talks about the archetypes Maiden, Mother, Matriarch, and they symbolize the different phases of a woman's life. So how was that for you when you went from Maiden to Mother?
So I grew up with my husband, right? He was my friend, but we didn't get married till I was about 26. So I had an undergraduate degree. I went through university and had an undergraduate degree. And then I checked on him and what his progress was, because I knew he had gone to university as well. And now he was in graduate school and he was writing a book and his house looked clean. And I thought, you look marriable. And I think that is what women do. They decide. They are the ones who are making the decision. This is the man. He's going to be the father of my children. And that's pretty much how I felt about it. And I told him at that time I was ready. I wanted to have kids. And he wasn't quite ready. because he felt like he was in his postdoc and he didn't have enough money. And so it did take us a couple of years to, for him to, he said he went for a walk. He said he had to go for a walk. And he went for a walk and he thought, babies? What do I know about babies? I don't know anything about babies. And I have work to do. So he came home to me and he said, I don't know anything about babies. And I have a lot of work to do. I said, well, you don't have to take care of the baby. I'm going to take care of the baby. You go to work and I'll take care of the baby. And he said, I'll take care of you. And I said, good. And I'll take care of the baby. I said, that's a good plan. And so that's how we decided.
That is
That's
so
how we,
funny.
yeah,
That's
but
so
it
funny.
makes
That's
sense, right?
exactly what I said to my husband. We had a fight on our honeymoon. I was like, okay, now babies. Right on the honeymoon, we're sitting at the beach in Vietnam. I was like, okay, next step. And he freaked out, completely freaked out. And I said, you just take care of me and I'll take care of the kids. And that sort of calmed him. I don't think they have it's so abstract for them.
And it is up to us to clue them in, because we're the
Mm.
ones who are going through this very time sensitive period of our life where we have to decide uh, on a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and a husband who we want to be the father of our children. And basically, that's everybody. I mean, there's the odd person, but it's very much a very small percentage of women who don't have the desire to have children or
Yeah.
have something more pressing that they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're taught
Right.
that we might have something more pressing, but when it comes to the time of your life when you are fertile and able to have children, that's usually foremost in women's minds.
Yes. And there's this moment when we turn 30 or sometimes later now that it just hits us like a tidal wave. And then we're suddenly on a clock and it's difficult to find a mate. Or what do you see in the societal trends around us? What that does to women? Because you were young, you had the choice. You could say, I want this mate and I want this to happen now. But you might not have had that same choice had you waited another 10 years.
That's for sure. I wouldn't have had that choice. That's for sure. And there is data now showing that by 30, if you haven't found a mate, a large percentage of you will not have children, and it won't
Mhm.
be your choice. You would have liked to have children, but because you weren't settled yet with a partner, you weren't able to do that. And so it's a decision and a plan that has to be formulated much earlier than that.
Yeah,
That's too
exactly.
late. That's practically too late. And we
Yeah.
have these other uh, methods of having children when we get too old, like IVF, but they're very expensive and
Very.
and they have questionable ethics associated with them. And
Yeah,
so,
but not just that. Like, I've guided a lot of women through it, and it's hell. And they're not told that the chances are low. They're not told that they're putting themselves through a lot of difficulty and pain, physical pain for something that
uh,
often doesn't work. They're not
I heard
told
that
this.
harvesting the eggs is very painful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's not something I would not want to do that. If I had a choice, I would not want to do that.
No. No,
And
that's one
that's
of the
something that
reasons.
that girls, are they told that? Like, are young girls told these things? Yeah, so we don't talk about these things. So it's good that we're talking about it. And,
Yeah.
that's the whole idea, is to bring these messages to young women. But it's no surprise that they find themselves in a very difficult situation if they don't start when they're young. When I left home when I was 18, I knew I wanted a baby. I was already certain I wanted a
I
baby.
was
I
young.
wasn't so certain I wanted a husband,
Okay.
right? So I had
How did
that. So
that work?
yeah, really good question, right? I wasn't thinking that through very much when I was 18 years old. I wanted a baby and a car to drive around the world. That's what I wanted. And now I have my baby with me and we travel around the world. But it's my husband.
Okay. good one. So
Yeah.
then you got both of those things, one first, and
Yeah.
then what did you do next, and which considerations went into that decision of how to live the life you led?
Well, I felt quite a natural affinity to my babies, but I'd been through university, and both of my older sisters, one was a pharmacist who owned a pharmacy, one was a nurse who was getting her master's in nursing. So they were ambitious, and I was 5 years younger than my closest sibling, so they were quite a ways ahead of me when I graduated. So I had them to look at and to see what they were doing. And I wouldn't say their marriages were going very well. They were very driven to be in their occupation, and although they wanted a family, they were torn. They were very torn, and some of that being torn they blamed on their husbands.
Hmm.
But it's confusing, and it's no wonder, right? Because you don't know you certainly don't know that it's your decision to work that is causing the problem. But it's a tricky situation, and now everyone is told that there's supposed to be two people working. And so we're just expected, or at least we feel we are expected, to go out to work and to be the breadwinner of our family, even though this is something I've been thinking of recently. So if a boy grows up and gets his degree, and then he finds a woman that he's attracted to and he wants to marry her, and and he wants her to have his children, if she agrees, and if she does want to have children as well, then that wife and that baby will be the motivation that he has to go out and work hard and do difficult things. And we talk a lot now about young men not, I hear this from young women, there's no good young men around.
Hmm.
I hear that and so then I've been thinking about that, and I think that we aren't giving them the right messages. That's partly what the problem might be, is that women they have this idea that they are self-sufficient, and that's not motivating, because we know that status, when I choose my husband and when you choose your husband, I was looking to see if he was successful. I was looking for success and status. Even though I knew him very, very well, I'd known him since he was 8 years old. What I was looking for was status. He didn't care what I'd done. Turns out that there is zero correlation between status in women and attractiveness.
Mm-hmm.
It has
Mm-hmm.
that has nothing to do with it. Whereas the man's status has everything to do with it. It's a very, very strong correlation. One of the strongest correlations. Women marry across and up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and men, they marry across and down. They don't care about
Yeah.
status. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that all the time in the hospital, how, my colleagues, so female doctors, they were thinking, oh, we're so attractive now. And then, our male colleagues would then go for the nurses who were 25 years old.
Yeah,
That happened
I know, I
all the
know.
time. And we're just like, huh? Just why we're so busy and intelligent. And yeah, but I've also met a lot of women who say, oh, where there are no good men, but they're usually over 30.
Yeah, right.
And that's the
And once you
sad
get to
truth.
be over 30, and if you're very accomplished, then there
Yeah.
probably aren't that many men
No.
that are more accomplished than you.
Mhm.
So then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's a question. It's a question. What are these women who have done their undergraduate and their graduate degrees, and then have gone out, say they're a professor,
Mhm.
or they're a doctor, or they're a lawyer? You know what happens to the lawyers? They work uh, in a firm, and they are very, very good at it. The ones that are good at it, very, very good at it. And they climb because they're competitive. They climb right up, they become partner. And then they look around and they think, I'm working 80 hours a week. And actually, this isn't even any more satisfying than when I started my job. So they quit.
Mhm.
They quit. And that's when they get married and they have children, because they realize that the whole status thing, it's meaningless, even to ourselves. Yet we're told that's
So
what's going to make our life meaningful. It's not true.
it's not true at all.
It's not
Um,
true. I know.
but
God.
so how did you communicate, or what did you communicate to your daughter to have her avoid these traps?
Well, I think that, like anything, if you live a certain way, your children learn from your actions. They don't really learn from your words so much, they learn from your actions. So I asked my daughter today, actually, because I've changed my diet a lot in order to be healthy. And when I was young, I had celiac disease. I wasn't very healthy. I couldn't stay awake because I was eating gluten and it was making me really sleepy. And so she said to me, she can remember when she was teeny tiny that I would lay on the couch while they were playing.
Hmm.
And they probably didn't understand what was going on with me, So kids really, they watch our actions. They see what it is we're doing, and how a man comes home, how is he greeted? And that's
Mhm.
something to talk about with your spouse, is how do you want to be greeted, and negotiate for that. And how do you know that you've negotiated to a reasonable conclusion? A spirit of play will emerge. So if you're negotiating, if you're asking your husband what he wants when he comes home, and he lays out how he'd like to be, he'd like you to come to the door when he comes in and to say hello, but then he'd like some quiet time because he's been working all day. But then he'd like dinner to be made because he's just, he's come home. So he hopes after he has this 15 minutes or half an hour of peaceful time that he wants to have dinner. And you're not so sure about that. Well, then you can negotiate that amount of time, because these children want to see him. And so there's these other things that you have to bring in. So you don't just agree with what he wants, you negotiate so that you're not resentful, because one of
Mhm.
the worst things for a marriage is resentment. And so that's negotiation that you have to do with your husband for what you need, and he has to negotiate for what he needs from you. And if you negotiate enough, there will be no resentment in your relationship. And the kids will understand that, and they will feel that, and they will learn how to negotiate. So this is funny. We used to have Sunday meetings with our kids when they were, 10, 12. And they didn't want to go to Sunday meeting. They wanted to go outside and play with their friends. We had a really nice street that we were on. It was quite quiet, and they played street hockey all the time, and it's hide and seek and everything else that kids play. They were out there. And 4 o'clock, they had to come in and have this meeting, and they didn't like it. And we would talk about the week's chores and what they were going to offer to do for the week. And so then we'd get through those things, and then the meeting was over. It wasn't a very long meeting. Well, when they went off to university, they had Sunday meetings with their roommates to ask about who was going to do what. And I thought, isn't that interesting?
We've
So
created little monsters.
that's right. But they watch what we do. They really do watch what we do. And that's how they play house when they're
Yeah.
little. They're finding out what it is to be a mother and what it is to be a father. And they're looking. I mean, this little grandson I have right now, he just creeps around and then he looks at me. He wants to
Yeah.
know if what he's doing is acceptable.
Yeah.
Chewing on something, is this acceptable? He looks to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's another thing about babies. If they have different caregivers all the time because they're in daycare,
Yeah.
and the daycare workers aren't, wedded to the job, so there's going to be different people taking care of the kids. They don't know who to look to learn
Yeah.
from.
They're also usually 19 with like face tattoos and piercings. Speaking from experience, always a different 19-year-old greeting you.
Yeah. So that makes it very tricky for
Yeah.
the child, and it's difficult for attachment, and you've probably talked
Very
about
no
attachment.
possible.
And have you talked about cell phones and how they interrupt attachment?
Not yet on the show, not yet.
So if there is studies done, people can look this up online. If you look up attachment cell phones, you'll see an experiment with a woman who's sitting in front of her child who's in a high chair, and the child is pointing and she's looking to see where they pointed, and they giggle and they interact, and then she turns around and she has a straight face, right?
Mhm.
And the baby points, looks around, starts to fidget, and then starts to cry because doesn't understand what's going on. If you look at and you see these videos of little kids throwing their father's cell phone in the pool,
Mhm.
right? Because they want attention and they will do anything for
Just
attention,
in the way.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how we grow up with behaviors that are immature, is because our parents, maybe they've been, maybe the mom or the dad is depressed and not spending as much time with eye contact and paying
Mm.
attention to the child. So the child will do everything they can to try to get the attention that they need, and then when they grow up they try to get attention the same way. So the
Yeah.
more dysfunctional the parents are, the more twisted the behaviors are of the child when they grow up. But there's ways around that, these programs, Alateen,
I
they're
haven't heard
based
about
on
that, no.
the 12 steps. Have
Okay.
you heard of the 12 steps for Alcoholics
Of
Anonymous?
alc I was just gonna say for alcoholism, is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah. So that's the 12 steps, but
Yeah.
we have something called Al-Anon for people who grow up with alcoholics. So that's
Okay.
for the wife
Yeah.
or for the husband, whoever was the drinker, because you change
Mhm.
your behavior when someone else is drinking too.
Yeah.
And the children of alcoholics or dysfunction, doesn't have to be alcoholism. It can be dysfunction
Mhm.
of any kind, because children will change their behavior no matter what if they're not getting the attention that they need. But this 12-step program teaches you a mature way to interact with people, and so it always improves relationships. So it's really worthwhile. I think it should be just taught in high school. Before
Mhm.
kids leave high school, they should learn how to relate to one another in a mature manner. And people from the church, even from different religions, will talk about the 12-step program because it's so nicely laid out. It's such a it's such a reasonable and understandable method
Yeah.
that if somebody is having trouble, they can just go through that and use that method and find all their relationships improve, and
Okay.
also that their relationship with themselves improve. So, right?
That's
Anybody?
interesting. I'll find that and link it in the description
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we can
yeah.
have a look. That's very interesting.
So when
You know, the cell phones, but I just think, moms on cell phone, and it's less of a problem than moms that are completely absent, right? Because
yes,
my
yes, but
issue
it's a
is that the
similar
moms
problem.
aren't there at all. Okay, they're on the phone or on the playground, but at least they're there. And usually, okay, let's call it, if you have part-time jobs and you're working, what, 30-hour weeks, many work more than that. That's 2 whole months away from your child a year. It's like if you just went and came back after 2 months, that's then how much time you've been away from the child. So I think that that's something that we should be discussing more openly, the dangers of daycare and the absentee mother who parents from 6 to 7 or 5 to 7,
Yeah,
and on the
when the
weekends. Or
child
what are
is
your
tired. Yeah,
yeah, how
so their
can we go about
relationship
doing
is.
that, you think?
Well, people do have to work now because now houses cost so much because there's supposed to be two people working in each family, so house prices have gone up. So it's harder for a single earner to buy a house. So in response to that, often both husbands and wives are working. So you have to have someone in the house with you that
Yeah.
is constant and reliable and someone that the child knows very well and does not change over the years. And so that's very tricky. That's very tricky. You know, these we think that we can just change things and that we can do as good a job, but the easiest thing is to be around for your child. So the easiest thing is to choose a profession that is something that you could do from home. So I was a massage therapist. So I would leave and I would go into my room. I had a Murphy bed that I could push up into the wall and put my massage table there. And so I would go into my room and do a massage. And but it was for an hour. It was for an hour. And actually, when they were very small, I felt that they needed me more than that. So I didn't do any massages when they were little. I drew some portraits, but I drew the portraits in the dining room. They were there.
You're there.
They were there. They were seeing that mom was busy. And it's not a bad thing for children to know that sometimes mom's busy.
Yeah,
There's a respect. You know, they have to learn respect for a mother's time.
Yeah.
But it's, I think, better. It would be optimal for the mother to be there so they can see why they have to respect.
But how did you know that you needed to be present? How did you know that
Well, I had these
hour
two
was too
older
much?
sisters.
Right.
One was a nurse, one was a pharmacist,
you
and they
saw
left kids
and learned from their bad experiences.
Yeah,
So that was then a conscious
both of them were
choice.
divorced. Both of them got divorced.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and my mother had stayed home. She stayed home until I was little. So actually, when I was little, my mom was working. But for them, they had a mother at home. But the narrative that women are taught now is that we go to work. So it doesn't even matter sometimes, it doesn't seem, what you have been taught at home. What you are taught in the system is that you're going to be most happy and most fulfilled if you have a career. Period.
Exactly.
And that's a lie. It's a lie that young women are taught, because really what's going to, I mean, I had home economics in high school. So I learned how to sew and I learned how to cook. I already knew how to sew and cook because my mother taught me, but some of the kids didn't. And so they learned how to sew and they learned how to cook. And the boys all took shop and they learned how to do mechanical work and woodworking and things like that. And that was in our program, and it's not there anymore. And that's a tragedy too, because it doesn't prepare people for marriage and home life as they need to do after high school. And the other thing I wonder about is, you know, we put our kids in daycare at 3. That's like optimal. Well, optimal. If you're at home, if you're home till their kids are 3, that's optimal.
That's optimal.
So say then you put them in junior kindergarten. That's what we do here. We put them in junior kindergarten when they're 4, and then they're in school. Then, like from then on, they're in school then until they're 18 years old, and then they go to university, say for at least 4 years, and then they might do a master's or a PhD. So then that is 12 years of school plus 2, that's 14, and 4, that's 18, just to get an undergraduate degree. So that's 18 years of school in all. That's a lot of school. And so I've been thinking about homeschooling. And you know, when people homeschool, they don't have to spend from 9 to 3. They spend a couple hours a day. And say, oh, well, mothers say, I can't afford to do that. No, you probably can't afford to do that. So then you have to find a group of mothers or a group of families, and you could teach one day a week. And it would be one morning or one afternoon, because you don't have to teach all day. There's a woman named, what's her name? I interviewed her. I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, she wrote a book about homeschooling. She hadn't homeschooled her kids. She'd put her kids in school, but her husband was an actor, and she went on set with him. So she took her kids, and it was a 2-week time, and she did homework with them. And then when they went back home, she sent them back to school and they came home with the homework. But now she knew what the work was. And she looked at the homework and looked very similar to what she was teaching them. So she wondered what they were doing at school. So eventually she just took them out of school and homeschooled them. At first, though, she's a Sam Sorbo. That's her name, Sam Sorbo. And she's written a couple of books. I'll get the names of them about homeschooling and about mothering, and she's very smart, and she didn't think she was smart enough to be a teacher for her children. You know, we're
Right.
taught that we don't know what we're doing, but that's not true. If you
No.
if you spend time with your children, you know what they need. You know
Yeah.
who they are and what they enjoy, and you want to
Mm.
encourage what they enjoy, and you want to teach them what they don't enjoy, but you want to make sure that you're rewarding everything that they do that is bringing them to a better understanding of what they need to get done. And women can do that.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's not legal everywhere.
Right.
That's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that that is very far from what we need to have happen first. I mean, first we need to secure those 0 to 3, and that's already a big challenge. I think
Yes.
those are really I would really focus on that. And the problem already there is that women they don't know anymore the importance of those years. That's very far from what we sort of know to be true. And I speak to women about this because I made that conscious choice of going out of the workforce, and people react very strongly to that because I'm a doctor. So
Mm-hmm.
that's such a blatant, a bold statement. So we
Mm-hmm.
talked to a lot of women about that, and they keep saying the same thing. I'm not enough.
Right.
The child needs more. I'm not enough, and I don't want to lose my identity. It's those two things. It's on repeat. I think there's much more here than just the double income. And I also don't believe that, there's a double income trap. I think if you really go through what you spend money on and make some different priorities, I think
Mm-hmm.
more people, it's really about what we know. If you know that how important it is, those 3 years, I do think that knowledge could maybe make you shift your priorities. Or what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think that you have to look. We have to look. Women have to look at the baby, the mother baby relationship. And we talk about women and what is a woman. What is a woman? A woman actually has a child. That's what a woman is. If you don't have a child, you're a girl.
Yeah.
Once we go through adolescence and we become fertile, we're a girl until we find a man to marry and have a child, and then we're a woman. It's an amazing thing to have a baby and I remember when I first had a baby. I went home and my husband was the oldest in his family, so there were no babies in his family, just my baby. And we went home and we put our baby on the porch at the lake, and his mom and dad were there, and his aunt and uncle were there, and his friends were there, and they just watched the baby for hours. They watched this baby who was in a jolly jumper and playing on the porch, and I was so relieved. I was so relieved that it had nothing to do with me. I
Yeah.
didn't want to be the center of attention anymore. Now I'd had a baby and the baby could be the center of attention. And I thought, isn't this great? I'm free. I'm free of that obligation. These people they can enjoy themselves, and I don't have to be engaged with them. I can spend my time doing other things. But it's not like I didn't have to be there. I had to be there. I brought her there. So, and that's she was maybe 8 months old. So I had been home for 8 months by that time. And it was my husband and I lived in a neighborhood far, far away from our families. So we didn't have that interaction until that time, because we flew there and saw them. And so it was quite apparent to me what had happened. It was a stark reality that I was seeing. Oh, I am not the center of attention. And I had been the youngest in my family, so I was kind of the center of attention as a youngster. So I knew what that felt like. But then growing up, it was, when did that change? It didn't change at all until I was 30 when I had my baby. I was 30 before I realized that it wasn't about me, it was about my baby. And it was about time that I learned that, because that's one of the principles of in the Bible is, to love God and to love your neighbor. And so when you have given up your hedonistic ways and you're not spending your time on momentary pleasures, you have a baby, so you're taking care of someone else, then you have your priorities right. That is a mature relationship. It's not just a mature relationship, it's a sacred relationship. Right. And that's why marriage is sacred. Marriage is sacred is because this union between man and woman is sacred, because it's practically impossible to be a fully alive person without it. And so somehow that has been written. That has been written for centuries. And how would they know that? Because there was no birth control pill back then. Yet our spiritual fathers have known all along, this is sacred. Hold it sacred, because this is what makes life worth living, so that you can withstand suffering. Otherwise, how do you withstand all the trouble that's going to come down the road if you haven't joined yourself to someone? How are you going to hold yourself up when your partner needs help? If you don't have this relationship in respect to the Heavenly Father too. And that's part of the problem, is a lot of our cultures are secular, and we have left the church thinking kind of like a 13-year-old that we knew what we were doing. 13-year-olds kind of think they know what they're doing. I remember when I was 13, I didn't need the church anymore. And in fact, I didn't need my mom and dad anymore. I was ready to leave home when I was 12. I thought, right? I did. I really did think. My
classic youngest child, though.
Yeah. My siblings had all left home. And I was like, well, I'm ready to go too. She was 18. I was 12. I thought, I'm ready to go. I know all that I need to know now. But that's not half of it. And maybe I did know enough to feed myself. But other than that, I had a job, I delivered newspapers. I think I made $5 a week. But I wasn't real. It was a start. And good for me. I was taking on responsibility.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, but I wasn't ready to go.
No?
But in my head, I was ready to go, and definitely didn't need the church, and I didn't need my parents anymore. And so we do have a tendency to believe that and in a way that's kind of good, because that means there's some bravery in there. But we have to understand that humility is also important, and to realize that we have to be grateful for our parents to work, that they've have a house over our head and all of that, when we're young. And we don't, as teenagers, we don't.
Yeah.
And so then as young adults too, we go off to university, and many people go off to university. And I'm not even sure all those people should be going to university. Well, not anymore anyway, because the universities, I don't know about the universities there, but the universities here they're doing their best to dissuade people from the traditional way of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, of course we have that over here too. And a lot, it seems to me that it's strange that we need quite so many liberal arts students. I'm just thinking, yeah, okay, but yeah, I've seen a lot of women. I talk about this girls in their 20s who are sort of encouraged into doing degrees that they neither have the competence for nor the interest, and they're sort of pushed, and then they come with panic, usually some form of anxiety, because they have conflicts within them. That's not what they want, and they are on this path and they're not achieving anything, and it causes them anxiety and depression, and one comes with the other. And so yeah, that's just what I saw clinically, that women are struggling in all ages, but that's just the consequence of shoving girls into universities while they actually they want their attachments filled. They're looking for a mate, they're not concentrating.
Are you looking to make your home stand out? Do you want visitors to pause at a stunning piece as they enter and say, "I've never seen anything like this. Where can I get one?" I was able to have that for the first time after having Benjamin Hassan design our beautiful, one-of-a-kind ketubah that's now proudly displayed in our living room. He also does landscapes and portraits, anything you want, aptly matching the mood and atmosphere you want to set, creating that moment you long for as you design your home. Go order your favorite piece that will come to mean the world to you at benjaminhassanart.com. That's benjaminhassanart.com and get a discount with promo code Psychobabble Podcast today. Go check it out.
I wanted to hone in on this transitioning gracefully from girl to woman. You mentioned you're not a woman until you've had a child. Can you say something more about that advice? And have you observed this trend that though even those who are mothers sort of hold on to this virginal appeal, maybe through working, through not spending as much time with their children?
I know I had one woman talk to me just last week, and she's got two little kids, and she's deciding whether she should have a third child. But she had to have help to have become pregnant, so she had to have IVF, which is another decision that is just phenomenally difficult. That we have to make that decision. It's up to God whether we get pregnant or not, and now it's up to us that we're getting pregnant. That's just too much. That's just too much. And so she was dealing with that, and she said something. She said, I asked her to think through what it would be like not to have another child, so she could write that down, all her thoughts about what life would be like if she didn't have another child, and also write down what life would like if she did have another child, so to help her decide what she was doing. But through the conversation, near the end of the conversation, she said something about, well, kids take a lot of emotional time, or emotional work, maybe is what she thought. And that's something that was worth picking up on, because that's a kind of a societal belief that we're taught. It isn't necessarily our experience, because if you're a mother and your children are taking emotional work, then maybe you're not loving in a true manner, right? So maybe your relationship with your children is one where you're at odds about what you're doing. So that's something to recognize. If you don't feel fulfilled, and I didn't have any cell phones when I had babies, so it was somewhat lonely, because I didn't have my family around either. So I had my little kids when I was in a university setting, really, because Jordan was still at the university. But we moved, and I made sure I moved into a neighborhood that had children. We drove around neighborhoods to find whether, because we didn't know the city. Once he had become a professor, we moved to a different city, so we didn't know the city. We had to drive around and find where there might be families living and people at home. So we drive there at different times of day, see if we could hear kids playing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Investigative work.
Yeah,
That's clever.
investigative work. And then we found a good place. We thought, okay. So then we got there, and it was a good place for kids. And I joined, I think I joined a mother's group first. So I
Mm.
met the ladies in the neighborhood, and I was still kind of lonely because I had no family there either. It was another
Yeah.
strange city. But when my cousin had a baby,
Yeah.
she was thousands of miles away. I looked for someone in the neighborhood who had a baby, and there was a lady down the street who had her second or third baby. I can't remember which. And I went there and I gave her dinner, prepared dinner. And she ended up going back to work and giving me her children to look after. So that was good because I
Okay.
needed something to do. I was in a different country. I didn't have a green card because we moved from Canada to the States. I couldn't work if I wanted to work. But she gave me, so that meant my kids had little friends that were there 3 times a week. And that was easy. And so that was good. And
Very brave. Very brave, I have to say, Tammy. I mean, one thing is to sort of say, "Oh, I can look after my own kids. I'm responsible for if I do anything." But to say, "Well, yeah, I'll try it out on your kids as well." Like, I think that's very brave.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted them to have kids to play with, and I had the time, so I had them at my house. It was all right, really. It was all right, and I think I did that for a couple of years. I did that for a couple of years, and I still know those kids now. If we go through town, they say hello, so that's very nice. And it was nice, and I drew some portraits. Right. So I was home, but I did some work for the university. I drew some portraits of professors, and that went very well. And so I became friends with and all the mothers. And so then every week we all met with our little kids and um, went to the vegetable stand that was nearby, or we went to a lake that was nearby and walked around the lake, or we went to the apple orchard, or we did these day trips, with these little kids, and they played and the mothers talked. And then when the kids got older, these women and I had a book club, and so then we met weekly discussing books. And so these relationships that we can make these relationships as mothers. We don't have to be lonely.
No.
And it's not because of a cell phone that we're not lonely. It is the relationships that we make that makes us not lonely.
Absolutely.
Another
That's such a good
one was
point.
my neighbor who lived just behind me. Her husband's mother went into the hospital at the same time that my grandmother was in the hospital. So I went to the hospital to see her because she was there. So I could do something there. I couldn't go see my grandmother. She was too far away. So I went and saw my neighbor's mother at the hospital. And just those very simple acts of kindness, those people invited us, I guess, to Rhode Island to spend the weekend years later. And it was just that one act of kindness that made that happen. And so, it's very interesting to do that, to think, what am I searching for? Can I find it here?
Yeah.
Right? Can I find it here? What am I searching for? I'm searching for love. Can I find it here?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe I need to get married and have a baby. And
Right.
then there'll be love around me always, and I won't have to search for it anymore. I think that's like a calling in life is love. That's the calling of life. And so it's really good to ask, what am I missing? Or if I'm fearful,
Right.
if I'm fearful or resentful. If you're resentful, then you're looking back too much
Right.
about what you're angry about that's happened in the past that makes you resentful. and
If
fearful.
I'm understanding you correctly, I mean, because you're very brave and you always had that exploratory, going out and doing things and seeing things through. And when I think of the most women would not have the guts to go and do and find and investigate, and that takes already, that's a big step. And so I live in a very sort of liberal, affluent community and big city. And so when I went out of the workforce, since I'm going to be a stay-at-home mother on principle, I was completely alone. Everyone was at work, all the kids were in daycare.
Yeah.
But the mothers would have one day off usually where there was kids. So I'd make a schedule and I'd say, okay, this day I can call that person and this day I could call that person. And I would on Sundays sit and sort of text them and see and make the plan for that week. But that also takes a few things that usually women don't do, or they don't have that sort of, I'm going to sit and make a schedule, I'm going to text everyone, because they might say no, you might be rejected, and they're fearful and they will not step out of their in-group. They will not make such a decision because that's what we fear the most, is being the odd one out. And so I'm just thinking of women, how they experience it now, and I don't think most women would do what you just did, have that courage to go and do and ask. And I'm thinking of ways to sort of to solve that or help them with that, help women out of that.
Well, fear, it would be fear-based trouble then. So your fear of being shunned, you'd be fearful of that. You might have a fear of belonging. So you might be just fearful of being in a group of women because maybe you have had no experience with it or bad experiences with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you think that this will also be a bad experience. One of the things, though, is it's not about you anymore. It's about your baby. It's about being with your baby with other people so that they learn how to get along with people.
Yeah.
And that can help with fear if you can look at it from your baby's point of view. That baby, it's good for the baby to see their mother with friends.
Yeah, we need that. And we have a problem with postpartum depression. We need the company of other mothers on that
Yes, we
plate, even
do.
if it's just for 20 minutes or whatever we can get. And that really helps. And
You can
I
find
see
those
mothers are
mothers at
lonely.
the playground, right?
Yes,
You can find those. Well, often you find nannies, right? That's what you find.
yeah.
And you find, and if you take them to exercise, you find nannies at the exercise class as well. And so even when my kids are 30, and when I was young and having children, that's the way it was for me too. There
Hmm.
weren't mothers there, they were working. But
Right.
now I imagine they're all working.
It's very lonely. You have to be very proactive and self-sufficient and yeah, I know everyone's nannies. It's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Which might, and the thing is, though, I wonder if you make a contact, because the nannies need something to do with the babies too.
Hmm.
So if you make contact with those nannies, then the kids become friends. Then maybe you can get to know the families.
Yeah, no, for me, I mean, this is not, I solved it, but it's difficult to convince women to go for a traditional model when they say, well, I'll be all alone. Because that's absolutely true. So you have to make that group, you have to embolden women to help them have courage to break that mold.
Yeah. And
Um,
yeah, I'm going to, that's what I did though. I went to exercise, I went to the library and read stories to the kids, and I met other kids there. But mostly what it was was right in my neighborhood. I found families that with children that had the same age of children as me, and I met those parents. And I think I did. I went to their houses, and
Yeah.
I can imagine that people wouldn't do that.
Mm.
That not everybody would do that.
There's something that's been getting a lot of attention lately, and that is the dramatic effect lifestyle and exercise have on our well-being and mental health. But the difficult thing is to stick with the routine. So what you need to do is to go and check out Pitch Fitness Center. It's a premium wellness gym, and it's gorgeous. It gives you that hotel spa feeling with every exercise, and their kids club is even open on Sunday. So head on over to pitch.ch, that's pitch.ch, and get a discount with our promo code Psychobabble Podcast today. See you there.
But there are different phases of motherhood as well. So when the kids sort of get to that 3 year, when they're 3, like I said in the beginning, you suddenly have hands free. And for me, that's very new. I'm used to carrying them all, having the ergo baby, and suddenly they're off playing with each other, and that's difficult. Can we talk about that? How do you have
Sure.
any advice, skills, values? How can we go through that, not feeling so empty, not being full of regret? I mean, I'm lying awake at night thinking, oh, time. I feel time is this monster that I'm fighting. It's going too quickly. Another day and tomorrow. Oh, he's not going to need a nappy anymore.
That's right. And then that's true. Yeah. So when you have little kids and they are now little children, they're not babies, then I really celebrated the changes. I saw them as exciting at every stage of life, even when they were teenagers. So I tried to look at what I had, but if I was grieving not being a new mother anymore, because that's a possibility, and it could happen to any of us. You have to allow that time to grieve, but give it a reasonable amount of time, and then get on with it. Just like you do, like different cultures will sit for. If someone dies, if someone dies, they sit for a couple of days.
Yeah, we sit for 7 days, for a week.
Right. So a
On the
week.
floor.
So say your baby isn't nursing anymore, then you have a week. You have a week to cry about it and to lick your wounds. But then it's time to realize that there's more to look forward to than that, and it's time to get on with it. To thank that, be grateful for what you have, and give yourself time to have the pain, but then keep the gratitude and go on to the next.
Yeah.
Part
Was
of
that
the,
something you felt, or were you able to just think, cool, like now he's now he's talking so much. That's so cool.
yeah, I did think that way. I don't have much negative emotion. I don't have a lot of withdrawal. I'm I'm not volatile. So that was always, that's helpful. That's helpful in my
That would be
personality.
helpful, I can imagine.
Right? That's helpful in a personality, because if you're
Yeah.
volatile, then all the changes that happen are going to hit you deeply, I imagine, more deeply than they would hit me. And I'm not sentimental either. So when my father died in December, whenever I go visit my sister who lives close to his house, we go over to his house and clean it up. But she won't do it without me, because when I go, I can decide whether something is something we should keep or something we should give away, or if it's garbage. I can make those decisions.
So on some things you really hit the personality jackpot, like from someone who has very average female
Or I
characteristics
can
over
be
here.
very blunt, though. I can be very blunt and not very nice. So I have to be really careful of that.
Okay.
And
So
I've learned that over time. I've learned that over time, that I can be very blunt, mostly in my relationship with my husband, because he's told me. He's
okay.
he tells me if I'm being too blunt, and I had a very blunt father, so I can understand where I learned it from.
Okay.
But and I told you I went through this 12-step program that
Yeah.
helped me to be more kind. It helped me to have
Okay.
more patience. It helped me to have more gratitude.
Yeah.
It helped, and so it softened everything, and that's been very good. So
But if you're not so agreeable, wasn't it difficult with the small kids?
mm, no, no, I'm compassionate enough. I'm just not very polite.
Okay.
Yeah, right,
I
because there's two sides.
understand why you're crying, but shut up.
I can cry. I definitely have cried. I cried the last 3 days of my podcasts. I have an elderly sister she's not elderly, but she's nearing the end of her life, so it's very sad. And I just saw her, so like my heart is broken. But I've cried. I've been crying for about a week, so I think I'm pretty much
You
good now.
cried out. Yeah.
I've got to the week until the next time, right? Until the
Okay.
next time. Yeah, well, I have my tender side. There's no doubt about it, but I'm not very tender, and that helps to be someone who can think something through with reason.
Yeah.
And if you can't think it through with reason, then you need to talk to your husband who can help you think it through, or a friend or a sibling or something to think things through, and
Yeah.
to say what it is that you're feeling also, and to, if you're hurting because of the stage of life that you're at, to accept that. And that's another thing that I've learned with myself too, is to be forgiving and to forgive myself for the mistakes I've made, or for the things that people have done to me, to forgive. And
How do
that
you do
that
that?
helps.
How did you learn
How do
that?
I do that? But
Yeah.
it's a process.
Uh-huh.
It's a daily choice, really, is what it is. It's a daily choice. So
Mm.
every morning, to make that decision to be forgiving. And it might be something that you've done yourself and that you're judging
Mhm.
yourself on. Every morning, it's a decision. Are you going to forgive yourself today and live this day, this one day, having forgiven yourself? And so it's a practice.
Right.
It's a
But I find
practice.
forgiveness also that needs something else. It needs also atonement. I think a lot because we talk a lot about self-forgiveness in our culture, and I find often it's just about letting yourself off the hook when you
Yeah, yeah,
continue to
there
do
could
the
be that.
wrong thing.
Mhm. Yeah. No. If you've done the wrong thing, then you have to change your tune. You have to, uh, like you said, atone for what you've done. You can't do that anymore.
No.
Right? You
No.
have to make a change, and that's when you can be forgiven for what you've done. That's
Yeah.
when you can forgive yourself, when you are mm, striving to live your life differently.
Yeah, and in terms of moms who are, because I've spoken to mothers clinically who come, they're distressed at this stage of life. Their kids have grown up. They have to sort of let them go. They'll be 6, and for them it'll be a lot more difficult than what I'm now experiencing, because they know that they haven't been there enough. They can't look back and say, well, I did everything that I could. I was there all the moments I could. It's passed them by. And that sort of regret, it hinders that transition, I find, in them. And it's a painful. I mean, that's largely why I'm doing this at all, because I had so many moments in therapy where I thought we need to do preventive work, because there's nothing you can do for these women who are mourning time that they should have spent, or mourning fertility that's just lost because of time, and that pain is so palpable.
Yeah,
um
and
yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
well, it's more women than we'd like to admit to that are in those situations.
Hmm.
So, well, there's a real need then for forgiveness. But in order to forgive, there's many things that you have to go through. First of all, you have to admit that that you made decisions that were not optimal, maybe like working all the time or whatever it was. So you admit that the way that you were living your life was not what it could have been. But you also have to admit that although you've tried everything to manage, nothing has worked because you can't do it by yourself. These kind of decisions that we make by ourselves are going to be difficult because we didn't take our cue from our intuition and what we might have done if we were trying to take the best care of ourselves that we could. Maybe we were going for power in order to get this job and be powerful, and then we didn't spend the time with our kids that we needed to. And so really it's an exercise in finding humility to recognize where we have made errors and to try to pay more attention. Because it's really hard to you can't change the past. You can't change the past, but you can change your opinion about the past. You can change your attitude about the past. You can do that. And if you do that, then you can live in the present, which is where we should be. We shouldn't be it's difficult to make the right choices if you're spending your time worrying about what you have done or worrying about the future. Because we have to be, especially if we're going to make the right decisions and be aware of what's best for us, we have to live in the present. And so that's something too that is necessary for these women who have maybe been led astray. They've been led astray. So the awareness that they've been led astray is the first thing that has to happen. They have to become aware that that's a problem. Then they have to accept that that is what they've done and there are consequences. They have to accept that and not fight against it because it's reality. And then they have to take the next right step. The next right step. That's all. So you have a vision of what you want, and it's in the future somewhere. I want to be married and I want to have some kids. That's in the future somewhere. But what do you do today? Today you look around you and you see, what is it that I can do that would be helpful? Helpful. What can I do to be helpful? And just do the next right thing and do not worry about that far off thing, because you will be guided by what it is that you see in the present, and it will take you where you need to go. So you have to be, the relationships that we have, you want to, in each relationship, you want it to be playful. And in order for it to be playful, there has to be negotiation, give and take. And so as little kids are growing up and as women are coming home and taking on the role to be mother, then there's a negotiation that they have to have with their children too. How much time am I willing to give you so I'm not resentful about you? Maybe they have to spend a little time in their bedroom playing by themselves. You make that into a safe environment and you leave them for 20 minutes so that you have this time that you need to do whatever it is you can do, so that when you come back together, you can be grateful to be together again.
Yeah.
And you have to be very sure that you're telling the truth and that you're not hiding behind trying to be nice trying to be nice. No, you don't. That's not a good idea. It's just not a good idea. It's bad to be mean. It's not good to be mean, but it's not good to be nice when you're not nice.
Mhm.
That's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's not nice. Being nice and being kind are not the same thing. Really
No,
not the same thing.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's why when you hear that this word nice, people are sick of this word.
Yeah.
In our culture, definitely. I'm sick of the whole idea of nice. It's gone it's gone into it's gone to it's gone to it's gone to a dark place. Now we're
Yeah.
even affirming whether boys are girls and girls are boys. We're
Yeah.
affirming gender
Just be nice. Be
because we're
nice. Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite evil. So we have to be very careful of that. It's the truth that we want. It's the
Yeah.
truth that we want. So that's why you got to pay attention to the present
Right.
and to do the next right thing and to understand when you've gone too far and to say what you need. Have the it's almost compassion, I guess, for yourself to say what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, that's difficult for women because they're
It is.
usually quite agreeable, and so they're used to being considerate of everyone, and then it's even hard to answer this question: what do I even want? Where do I want to go?
Yeah,
Because where is
that's
everyone else at?
right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah,
Um,
realizing that the only people we can change is ourselves.
mhm.
That's a good one. We can't even change our kids. We offer to our kids. We offer them um, mm, activities, teach
Yeah.
them teach them how to engage with one another, to love one another. It's that, and that's where love can be. It can be between siblings. That's what
Mhm.
a parent wants to see when a little child comes up and says, "I love you, mommy. What can I do for you?" And you say,
Mhm.
"I love one another.
Mhm.
Treat each other with respect and love one another, and tell the truth."
Mhm. So, but so I mean, you went through another transition that few do. This you had a terminal illness. Yeah,
Hmm.
and that was when you were still mothering at that time. Is that right? Like
Uh,
you're
no,
not yet.
my kids were grown. My kids were
You're
grown
grown.
and married.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
How
they
was
didn't have
that
children yet,
transition?
though. My daughter had a child, but my son
Mm.
had no children yet.
How did you come through that? Uh, I guess what I'm really wondering is how did you guys make that transition together, not having drifted apart? How
Ah,
could you that because I find that very interesting. Also,
yeah,
this
that was interesting.
incredible fame that you got if it's almost 10 years ago now or something.
Oh,
I
yeah.
find it incredible that that hasn't torn you guys apart.
Well, when I was ill, when I was ill at the beginning, they told me what I had was not serious, right?
Mm.
So we were still touring because by then Jordan was already well known, and so we were touring with his next book. And but when it was convenient, I came home and I had surgery for kidney cancer, renal cell carcinoma, and I was getting better. I was getting better. I was walking a lot. I was getting healthier. And then I got a pain in my back, and I was still seeing my oncologist. And when I went in and told him I had a pain in my back, they looked at the biopsies and found out that actually it wasn't renal cell carcinoma. It was something called a Bellini tumor, which is a very, very serious kidney cancer that kills people in under a year. And so he told me, and his hands were shaking. He was very distraught that they had missed this. Um, and I, in my usual way, I thought about whether I was going to die. And I thought, well, my mom died at 72, and her siblings died of cancer in their 60s and 70s, and her father died at 57 from cancer. Maybe I was going to be one of these. Maybe I inherited this problem, you know? So I went home to tell my son. He lived at the end of the street with his wife. And when I told him, and I told him that I was going to die, I saw this terrible grief in his eyes of a boy losing his mom. And that's not what I'd been thinking. That's not what I'd been thinking. I was thinking I could die. Oh, well, I'd had a pretty good life. But I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't thought about what it was like for my son. So when I told him, I saw all the love that I'd had for him reflected back to me in that moment. And I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. And I think really literally I felt lighter all of a sudden. And I think I felt my self-doubt and my skepticism leave me. And I felt peace fill my body. And I said to my son, God only knows when I'll die. The doctors don't know. The doctors, you know, they have opinions and they are trying to inform me, but nobody knows when I'm going to die but God. That's all. I said, so we'll just go forward. We'll take whatever care comes my way, but and be grateful for it. And so that began a journey of gratitude and actually much more peace in my life, even though I was scheduled for surgery and was supposed to die. I didn't worry about it after that at all, and survived. And then, but my husband was very, very ill at the same time. It was as if we went into some sort of spiritual war. I really don't know what happened. We both got so sick, you know, so sick. And we were apart for nearly 3 years because when he was sick, he couldn't live at home. He needed someone to watch him all the time. And I was just recovering from this terrible illness where I had gone down to something like 80 pounds. I was just barely, I took a picture of myself. I had no flesh on my bum. My breasts were gone. Like I thought, oh, this is what it looks like to starve to death. Because I had a leak in my lymph system and they couldn't find it. So the nutrition never went to my body. It just filled up. And so I had a catheter in my side that emptied from the space in my abdomen. So it emptied the fluid from there, but I wasn't getting any nutrition that was going to my body. So I was slowly wasting away, even though I was eating. And I worried that my husband was really worried more than me. It was really hard on him. And I told him that I'd be better by my anniversary. This was in June. And in August 19th, I was down in the United States at a specialist who was an interventional radiologist. And he'd put a dye through my body, through my lymph system. And he was looking on a screen, an MRI screen, and he was looking to see where a plume might be, so they could find where the leak was, but they couldn't find it. But the little bag that was filling up was clear, had my fluids in it, but they told me if I ate some fat, it would get cloudy. So they were going to do more surgery on me and cut me open. And it's just like a spider web, right? The lymph system, it's nothing. You know, when you see a spider web, you can hardly see it. That's what the lymph system is like. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to cut me open and look for it? Are you joking? Are you joking? And so I thought I better eat some fat and find out what was going on. And so I ate an egg or something, I remember. And I looked at the bag and I thought, well, it still looks the same, you know. And the next morning I was outside having breakfast and the head nurse came and one of the interns came and they said, you're going to have to do a fat challenge. And I said, I did it last night. And they said, well, let's see this bag. And so I showed it to them and it was clear. And they said, Well, if the bag is clear and you ate some fat, that means the hole has closed and you no longer are ill. You're better. And so I went in, and half an hour later, they pulled out all of the, because I had an IV and I had a catheter for collecting all my fluids and everything. They pulled that all out. And I went home to the Airbnb, and my sister-in-law was there with her kids, and my mother-in-law was there. My son and his wife were there. My husband was there. They all came with me. And I looked at my watch and I realized it was our anniversary, and I was better on that day that I had said I would be better. But it was not anything other than a miracle that I was better that day.
Wow.
So, and my husband, he's not as religious as me. I'm pretty sure. I'm absolutely sure there's a God up there. So, I'm sure of it. From my own experiences, I'm pretty sure. But he was still very, very sick. So as I got better, he eventually came home, and we found ourselves together.
Mm-hmm.
And it had been a long time.
Yeah.
And we wondered if we had anything in common, because I had totally changed. I had gone from being agnostic to a believer. First of all, that's a huge change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had been away so long that we didn't even know what we had in common anymore.
No.
So we were sitting in the living room, and all the other times that we'd sat in the living room together, we'd had dates. Ever since my first baby was born, and only when she was only a few months old, my husband came home one day and said that he was lonely. And I said that I was not lonely. I was very well taken care of. I was busy with this baby, and she was fulfilling me in every way. But if he needed time with me, we could schedule a date. And he said, "Oh, that would be not very spontaneous." And I said, "Well," I said, when we used to date, when we weren't married, we scheduled dates, and it worked then. So it could work now. And he said, "Yeah, okay." So he trusted me, so he was willing to try it. And so,
Brilliant.
and when my husband decides he's going to do something, he does it, right? So then he said, "How many days a week?" And
Oh, wow.
what are the like, how are we going to do this? And so we did this 3 times a week, and it might be a nap because we were tired. That might be our date, right? Or it might be dinner. But often it was a romantic time together. And so we did that when we were in our 20s. We had a date 3 times a week. And that lasted a very long time. So now we were in our 50s, and we would have a couple of dates a week, but we kept it up. Like, we always had this time together that was scheduled, and we had to agree. So we would agree. You want to have a date tonight? No, not tonight. I'm tired. Well, what about tomorrow? Oh, I have a busy day tomorrow. Well, what about the next day? Well, the next day, actually, I'm pretty free. Could we have a date that day? Okay. And so then once you had agreed that you're going to have a date, that was when the date was going to be. So you had to make sure that the day of the date, you had a nap so that you were awake once the kids had gone to bed, because we didn't have any babysitters. This was at home with our children, and they were sleeping, and then we would have a date in the living room. Okay, we're going to have a date. It's the next night. I've had a nap. We've had dinner. Okay, we're going to have a date. Well, what do? I go have a shower or a bath, and I get on something nice and some perfume, and he fluffs the pillows and puts on some music and gets dressed, and we dance together. And we didn't know how to dance very well, but we danced together. We would dance together. And over the years, we've got so we can really dance together. Like, we really know how to dance now.
Without course or anything.
Without a course or anything. I wanted to take a course with him, but it just didn't work. And he used to take such big steps, when we would waltz, he'd be taking these big steps, and funny. It was so funny. We couldn't dance. My dad could dance, and so he taught me to dance, right? But Jordan's dad didn't dance, so he didn't know how to dance, and neither did his sister. Like, they didn't know how to dance. But it's funny because we were in Nashville a few years ago. Once everybody was better and everybody was feeling better again, and we were dancing, and a lady from the little bar that we were in asked if Jordan wanted a dancing lesson, and she taught him how to lead.
Okay.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
didn't know how to teach him to dance. I only knew how to dance like a woman, so I didn't know how to teach him. So he came back and he had figured out how to lead, and I could follow. And so now I've taught him how my father danced. So now I
Okay.
get to dance with my husband as I danced with my father.
Oh, wow.
And my
That's
father
very
is on the
romantic.
ground. Isn't that romantic?
I guess that really improved your dates as well.
It did. It really did. And so that when we were together, after all of this calamity, we sat there and said, "Should we have a date?" Well, I guess we might as well. Well, I knew what to do. I went and had a bath. I got on some perfume and something nice, and he fluffed the pillows and everything, and we met and we danced. And we were still wanted to dance, and we couldn't believe it that we still wanted to be together like that. And that saved
Yeah.
our marriage. That practice of dating saved our marriage. It's
Very
well worth it to do that.
Yeah, that's such a nice concrete advice. I don't think couples now, at least what I see, they don't spend enough positive time together. It's all logistics and who's going to do that and who's going to pick up the sick kid
And that's
and
important. You have to do
yeah,
that every week, and it takes
yeah,
about 90 minutes. It's a long time, and you have to do it. And this is the thing. So we'd come, so I would, have a bath, get dressed, we'd meet, and then I'd want to talk about Julian, my son, maybe he was at school this week, something happened and I have to talk through that, or maybe I had trouble with something that came in the mail, or so I'd have these problems that I'd have to discuss, and my husband would be worried that we weren't going to have a date, and so he could hardly listen to my problems because I said I was going to have a date, and then I'd come together with him and he wants to talk about her problems. That's not going to
not
work.
very romantic.
No, that's not very romantic. But so now it's been another 7 years since we've been ill, and my husband has realized that couples have to talk through logistics. They have to do that before they can have a date.
Yeah.
And so now when I come together with him, he's ready. Like he's ready. He's going to have something to say. Could be about me. I don't know. Like it's going to be. And I'm going to listen. Because if
Oh.
I listen, we can have a date.
Does he take notes as well? Write it down?
No, there's no notes, but he probably writes it the next morning.
Yeah. The minutes.
But so that's been a lifesaver to our marriage, is that we had a practice. It's like a practice of prayer. People say, "Why do you go to church?" Well, it's not because you have a catastrophe every day, but one day you will have a catastrophe. One day. And you will be looking for comfort.
Yeah.
And there will be none. There will be no comfort. But if you know your way to prayer, or if you know your way to church, you can find that comfort there.
Yeah.
And so that's why you practice those things. And that's why I think that's why we have that practice of dating. It's the same thing. One day
you're gonna need
everything
it.
in your life is going to disappear, because tragedy is going to hit us all. And as a doctor, you would see that. You would be seeing the tragedies. And so if you have a practice with your husband that you have been honored, that you have honored, so you're not trying to game the system, you're trying to get along, you're trying to tell the truth and get along, so you're not lying that you'll have a date in a couple of days. You're going to have a date, and you're going to do what you can to make it the best night you can.
Yeah.
That's the aim, and the aim has to be up. It has to be a proper aim. So when you have these dates, there is no gaming the system. You may have something that you have to say, and that's fair. So don't disallow that because you can't get close. unless you
Yeah.
say the things that are between you.
But what do you do now? You're not together now physically, right? Or when he's touring, when you're
I tour with
yeah.
them usually,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but we don't stay in the same hotel room. So this is another thing that happened was we were touring in the same hotel room, staying in the same hotel room. You know, he finishes his part of the evening an hour and a half after me. So by the time he comes back, I'm asleep. So then he has to come in quietly and get in the room. But then I've gone to bed earlier than him, so I get up in the morning and I have to be like quiet because he's come in later, and he wasn't feeling well, and I didn't know why he wasn't feeling well, and I was getting frustrated. And we were in Detroit, which is very close to our home, and I said, I'm going home. I'm going home. And so I went home, and I was at home alone, and I was thinking, I like to be on tour. You know, I was opening the shows, so I had a function, and it was a challenge, and I enjoyed the challenge. So I was there doing my part, and I couldn't do it anymore because for some reason things weren't going well, and I had to come home. And I must have prayed, although I wasn't in the habit of praying. I must have prayed, uh, and I pretty much said, what do I have to do to go back on tour?
Mhm.
And I heard a voice, and it said, get your own hotel room.
Mm.
And I thought, get your own hotel room? That's what God is telling me, to get my own hotel room? So I called my friend and I said, God told me to get my own hotel room. And she said, oh, well, then that's what you should do. I think that's a good idea.
Ah, very practical. This guy's amazing.
So I did. I called the guy who books all the hotels. I said, book my room separately from my husband's. And so I got back on tour, and I was all ready to go. And we didn't have a show that night. And he said, well, we don't have a show that night. You can stay with me. And I said, no, I said, I have my own hotel room. I'm going to go stay in my hotel room. And he's like, what? What do you?
Which hotel room is the tidiest?
I don't know. I don't spend any time in
No
his
compare. Oh, wow.
You know what's
Truth
nice
will out,
about it?
Tammy.
You know what's nice about it is when we want to be together, we have to say so. We have to talk about it. It's
Okay.
it's not an expectation, because
Yeah.
expectations are future resentments. That's what expectations are, future resentments. You know, you expect something to happen, it doesn't happen. You start
Yeah.
to think back, and you are not happy about that, and so it's not good.
Yeah.
So it's better to be upfront with what you want.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
it's better. It's
Yeah.
better. People think they feel bad that they want things, and they feel bad that they need things, and they feel bad, but that doesn't help. It doesn't help. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help anybody else understand. Why doesn't he understand me? You know,
Yeah.
why doesn't he understand me? And
If
he
he
doesn't
just
know.
loved me.
Yeah,
If
he
he just
doesn't
loved me
know
when I
me.
was
And
just,
they're thinking, well,
yeah.
maybe you're not telling him what you need.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the problem.
That's
Tell him what you need, and then he can love you by giving you what you need. Because what does a man want? He wants to give his wife what she needs. That's what he wants to do.
yeah. How did you come to all this wisdom? How did you? Because you've done these transitions so gracefully, and I
I'm
think
old.
where a
That's
lot
how.
of other we sort of.
I'm old. I'm old. That's how. I'm old. I've
But
been through a lot,
mhm,
um, and we're good at talking things through. He and
mhm,
I. You know, we don't stew for a week and then talk. We talk right away. Is
mhm.
there a problem? Let's talk it through.
But
And
then again, you have the courage to speak your mind, whereas a lot of women are more agreeable than you are, and it's easier
yes,
for them to just say, well, it's very difficult for them just to defend themselves, just to speak up, to have
yeah.
that
So it
courage.
has to become a
Yeah.
practice that you'll get better at, because you won't be good at it. And I wasn't good at it at the beginning. You know what I would do at the beginning? We would have an argument. And usually when we were first married, my dad drank, and my mom worried about him. And
Mhm.
so if we were going to have people over for dinner, once I was married to my husband, I thought there would be drinking, and it made me really nervous. And I didn't
Okay.
want people to come over, right?
Mm.
And he's like, what do you mean you don't want people to come over? I always have people come over, like before he was married to me, right? I always had people come over. Why don't you want anybody to come over? Well, I didn't know why I didn't want anybody to come over. So I'd say, I have to go to sleep. What do you mean you have to go to sleep? We have to talk about this. No, I'm tired and I have to go to sleep. And then I would have dreams that
Oh.
would help me to understand, because I didn't even know myself what I was upset about. And so then I'd get up in the morning and I'd say, okay, I had this dream.
Oh,
I
wow.
had this dream and this is what happened. And he'd say, well, what do you think that means? And I'd tell him what I thought it meant and everything. And it would give us some kind of indication of what was going on.
Yeah.
And then we could talk through whatever disagreement we had. But what we've learned to do over the years is, if we have something that's between us and it's not pleasant and we're not getting anywhere, that we separate and we sit on the edge of our bed and we say, okay, what am I doing to make this worse? Please
Mm.
tell me. Please tell me anything. And it might be whatever comes to mind is what it is what you bring back to this conversation. Okay, I think maybe I'm, like last week or a year ago, this happened. And that's what came to me. So there's something, this is part of whatever happened in this other scenario. And now it's between us because it was never reconciled before. So now we have to reconcile this problem because it's come up again.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can find those things. You can find if you ask, if you sit on your bed and ask, you'll be told, or it'll come to you, what it is that you're doing to cause a disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to you to tell the truth. So you have to go and tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And your husband has to do the same. And then you can get through these disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to negotiate enough so that you
Mm-hmm.
feel a sense of rhythm and play between you. And if you don't feel that rhythm and play between you, there's still some unspoken resentments that haven't been, or fears that haven't been talked out yet.
Yeah. It's very good.
And it's more of an investigation. So don't take it so seriously. Don't take it so personally. Some of these things were presents from your parents. They taught you these behaviors and you didn't even know you had them. And
Yeah.
now you have to figure out how to get rid of them because you don't want your children to have them too. Right? And
Mm-hmm.
I learned this stuff a little and a little over the years. And I'm sure my kids learned all my bad habits. I'm sure they did. But I'm trying now not to
Yeah.
have those. And so then my grandkids don't have to learn my bad habits. And maybe my kids can learn from me now. I
Yeah.
hope. Of
But
the
now
things
they're parents, your kids.
my
Um,
kids, they're
they're both parents, right?
they
There
are.
have been moments where you thought, oh, that transition didn't go as well. This is not, that you're not fulfilling the potential of the phase that you're in. Or now have there been such moments where your
Yes.
teachings might not have gone through as you'd wished?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. My daughter, she was quite sick as a child, right? So we had a very complicated relationship because of her illness. But she has a good marriage and she has a personal relationship with God. And so I can talk to her and she can listen and we can have pretty blunt conversations about what we think and she can hear what I say. She doesn't have to accept that it's for her,
Mm.
but she can listen and not take it too personally. And with my son, he also has a good relationship with his wife, and I actually have talked to them about going through this Al-Anon program with me,
Mm.
and they agreed that maybe that would be a reasonable request, because I think all of us need to learn that we are insufficient on our own, that there is something greater than us that has answers that we have to pay attention to,
Yeah.
and that we have some grievances that we
Yeah.
have to put down on paper,
Yeah.
and we have to see how we feel about them because we feel hurt by them.
Yeah.
And in what ways are we hurt? So we can find out in what ways we are suffering. Is it self-pity? Is it too much self-reliance? Is it self-righteousness?
Yeah.
Is it fear?
Lack
What are
of
the
assertiveness.
all those
What
things? And
else? Yeah.
there's many ways we can
Yeah.
go wrong. But but if we can see the pattern of how we go wrong, then we can recognize it in ourselves, and that's really helpful. And then we can say, what would be a better way? What would be a better way to respond
Yeah.
in kindness, And so then when we find ourselves going into this place of resentment or fear, then we can step back from that place and say, I'm making an error. I can see I'm making an error. I've taken this too personally or something, right? And what can I do? Well, first of all, I have these little prayers that I do. Thy will be done, not mine. Thy will, not mine, be done, which is helpful because it's like, this is your problem, not my problem. This is your problem. Please tell me what I did wrong. And so you're again looking for guidance and from your intuition, and it will come. It'll
Yeah.
tell you where you're insufficient, right? And
Yeah.
then be grateful for that. Be grateful for that, and ask whatever trouble you're having to be taken from you because you don't want it anymore. It's not actually working in your favor anymore. Because if you don't say that, well, maybe you still want to keep that. Maybe that self-pity, you're kind of enjoying that self-pity and you don't want to give it up yet. Well, then it'll stay with you. But if you are ready, you can ask it to be lifted from you.
Yeah.
And then it will be lifted from you. And then you can review every day. And at the end of the day, you review, have I been kind? Have I been grateful? Have I forgiven? Is there anything, am I holding anything? And if you're holding it, then you write it down and you make amends as soon as you can, as long as it doesn't cause harm to other people.
Yeah.
If it makes things better. And then you pray and meditate, and then you try to spread this message of goodwill to your fellow man. And it's quite a beautiful program, and it's non-denominational, all this AA. It's your higher power is what they talk about.
Yeah.
Instead of God, because they wanted as many people to come to this as they could. So there's people who are part of the church, there's people who are atheist, and they all work together to find a more mature way to relate to their children and to their spouses and their friends and their co-workers. So it makes everything better. And I tell you, since I did go through this program now 7 years ago, and I still go to a meeting once a week with these lovely women that go there too and are helpful to me when I need help. They're there in this meeting an hour once a week, which is minimal, but it's good because those people I can talk to, because they are the Al-Anon creed, I guess, is that if I tell people what I'm thinking, they can't respond. They can just say thank you. So you can say whatever is on your mind in a place where nobody is going to say, well, you're not very smart or something, like they're not going to say that. They're just not going to say that. And so it's a safe place for people to go. So if you're having trouble with something that you've taken personally, you can go there and you can talk about it. And through talking about it and listening to everybody, you usually find relief.
Yeah.
And so then when you go back to your family, you can be present with your family and you can listen. You can listen. And my family has told me that I'm much easier to get along with now, that I've changed. I'm a much kinder version of myself. So it's been well worth it to go through this. And, if I had done it when my kids were younger, they would have benefited from it more. Because now they're gone, they have their own lives and their own marriages. But if if I had done this program when they were little kids, I could
Yeah.
have instilled in them the lessons I had learned from this program, and they would have had them too. That would
Okay.
have been lovely.
The more kindness or more, what was it that they were lacking?
What are people lacking? Well,
No, what was
they're
it
very
that they're
concerned
lacking?
about themselves, right? They're very
Okay.
concerned about themselves. This
Mhm.
program teaches you to be concerned with your fellow man.
Mhm.
But to tell the truth, and your
Yeah.
fellow man is you, but you
Yeah.
tomorrow, not just today, but tomorrow. So making decisions that are good for you and good for others.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very, very nice. Yeah, very close to what we're talking about. I mean, we're observant Jews, and so it just resonates with
Oh, yeah.
what we're
Mm.
teaching and learning. And yeah, we're just in this period of repentance. So we have the big day, Yom Kippur is now on Saturday, where we fast
Yeah.
um, and atone, and we're
Right.
supposed to ask
And
for
people don't even like
forgiveness.
to talk about atonement anymore. But
No,
it's well worth it. How is anybody going to get on in life if you can't atone? Because you'll never forgive yourself. And
exactly. It
right?
comes from this: we're supposed to accept everything and approach everything in a non-judgmental, nice manner. So saying that a behavior isn't acceptable, it's not nice. So, but if you then we also don't get to the thing that you can do better.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you have to realize that you have to recognize that we're broken,
Mm.
right? That we're broken,
Yeah.
and that's just the state of everyone's life.
Yes. Yeah.
Where nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And
It's,
so that makes it a little easier to be humble, because you realize that you're you're someone who's missed the mark,
yeah.
which is what sin means, is to miss the mark. So you've missed the mark, uh, and you continually miss the mark, but you're doing your best, and you're
Yeah.
willing to learn to do better. And that's the
Yeah.
best you can do.
And it's a hopeful message. I find this time of year always very nice, because I know I'm getting a new chance. There's always next year, and
Mm.
I can do better. And I always have these things where, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Um, you know, maybe one thing works. I set myself 5, and maybe one thing works. But it's actually a very hopeful message. This
Yeah.
realizing that we are sinners, and we're doing everything wrong, and but God gives us that second chance, and yeah, we would just follow his teachings, then there's
Yeah.
a hopeful future.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. And people are having a hard time with hope these days. And it's partly because we think that that all the responsibility is with us. And it's
Mhm.
not. It's not. We have to find the answers from above, and then we can put them into action. But to think that
Yeah.
the answers come from us, that's a lot of responsibility. Too much. It's too
Yes.
much. Yeah. And so my young mother's like, it's too much. You're not responsible for everything. You're responsible from what you can see that's in front of you.
Yes.
And you can deal with that. And that's good.
Yeah.
That's the definition of good.
Right. But they need more help. They are alone. They are they are taught the wrong things. They are they're really, like you said, led astray. And they're really suffering. I feel for them, and they can't
I do.
they're not present to do anything about it. It's a big problem.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And so
I yeah.
that's why this 12-step program
Hmm.
is helpful to those people. And it's helpful to the ones that are doing well, and it's helpful to the ones who are not doing well. It's helpful
Yeah.
to everyone. And it will bring people a sense of calm and a sense of hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good. And
Mm.
it'll help their children, and it'll help their relationships, and it'll
Yeah.
help mankind to find the way forward, because we are in a time now that is very challenging. It's very challenging, and people are suffering.
Yes.
And we have to recognize that we're suffering, but there is a way forward, and the way forward
Mhm.
is to learn some ethics, proper ethics.
Yes.
I think we've tried to do it without it, didn't work.
Didn't work.
So let's just admit it didn't work. It just didn't work. Oh well,
Yeah.
didn't work. There's been lots of things we've done didn't work. We let them go. We can let this go. We can let
Yes.
this secularism go and take our place on our knees.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had an episode with a rabbi, because I do feel that psychologists and therapists, they've taken their place. I do very
Yes.
often feel that you don't belong here with me, you belong across the street. And they're terrified of touching anything that might have to do with psychological distress nowadays. So they send them. So that was the conversation I had with him. It's very interesting. I do think that a lot of these problems that I've seen in therapy it's not to be solved there, and I can't solve it there. They're stuck. I'm stuck. So that's a lot of the message of Psychobabble. So this resonates with me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why it's psychobabble. So are you a psychiatrist?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Yes.
you were a psychiatrist, but that makes sense now.
Yes. Yes. So, but yeah, so a religious one. So
Yes.
I'm very I've been trying to answer this question: what do we do with those patients who are in between or falling between two chairs? I also sometimes sent the religious patients to me who weren't, and I couldn't help them. There are a lot of people who are better served in religious communities, and I try to
Yeah.
speak to that religious communities, they give a lot of that a therapist can never give. Just that not being alone, this treating others with kindness, these positive messages, the messages that are simple, and that if you follow them, they will lead to a better life. But in
Yeah.
therapy, because psychologists and psychiatrists, therapists, they follow postmodern principles, and they're very secular.
Even some of the churches are secular, which is a
Absolutely.
problem. Yeah.
Very that exactly. And so that's so I'm trying to rebel a little against that.
Good.
That they're not getting, they're stuck because of secular therapists who
Who people
will
turn
never.
to instead of turning to their priest or confession. These things have been in place for centuries, and now we decided we don't need it. What gave us the arrogance to decide that we didn't need it? Right? It's
Exactly.
very, it's a drawn out adolescent idea.
Yes, that's very good. Yeah. No, that's so yeah. Date, celebrate new phases. I like that a lot. Take time to mourn.
Yep.
A week is good, and then celebrate new phases. Write down the life that you envision on both sides. If you're in a struggle, such as should I have another child, should I not, talk to your husband, talk to someone you trust,
Yeah.
and
Tell people what you do.
negotiate, and be playful with each other, and dance.
Yeah, and dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, women love to dance. Dance.
Those are amazing messages. Very good advice.
You're a good host.
Um,
You listen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
My
all of
pleasure.
this, for your wisdom, and everything you're doing for women.
Well, whatever I can do, I want to help. Since I've been sick, I don't see anything else to do but to help with people who need help. I don't see anything else to do.
And thank you all for listening to Psychobabble. I really enjoyed doing this episode. Sorry that it was a tad longer than it usually is, but I felt it was worth it, and I'll make these chapter marks so that you can skip and go to a topic that you enjoy. Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to me. Please consider becoming a paid subscriber to Psychobabble so that I'll have more wiggle room to do more great content. Have a nice day.